Stanford University.
Well, welcome to lecture number 11 of Stanford CS193P. This is fall of 2017 quarter. And today we have two huge topics to talk about. The first one is drag and drop, which is a way of sharing information between apps, especially important with iOS 11 because on the iPad there's quite a great multitasking ability to have two apps on screen at the same time, and nice to be able to drag and drop between them. And then we're going to talk about table view and collection view. Definitely a big step up in complexity of what I've been teaching you so far, but I think you're ready for it. So drag and drop. What is drag and drop about? It's very simple. You literally just press and hold, okay, which we call a long press on iOS, on something that can be dragged and start moving. And when you do, the operating system, iOS, is going to let you drag that thing around, and then you can drag it over things that might receive it and let go, and it drops them in there. Simple as that. You've seen drag and drop on the desktop all the time, so now we have it with multitasking. What's really incredible about the way they did drag and drop is that while you're dragging and dropping and you're dragging the thing around, you can use your other finger and still completely use your UI however you want. Okay, so drag and drop does not interfere with the operation of your iPad at all, okay, which is quite amazing because you could be in the middle of a drag and say, oh, well, actually, I need to navigate to this other part of my app to drop that, and it'll work. And it's kind of the value of having multi-touch, multi-fingers. You can also be in the middle of a drag and say, I want to drag these other things too, and just tap on other things, it'll add it to the drag. So they really use the multi-fingers of multi-touch to great effect with drag and drop. So how do we implement drag and drop? What do we do in our code if we want to participate in drag and drop? The real gateway to making this work is through these things called interactions, okay? So drag and drop is a view thing. It's a UI view thing. In the same way that gestures are kind of a UI view thing, you can sort of think of drag and drop as just another really powerful gesture if you want, but you don't enable drag and drop by adding a gesture recognizer. Instead, you do it by adding a drop interaction or a drag interaction. But it looks almost exactly the same as adding a gesture recognizer. UI view just has this method called add interaction, and it takes either a drag or a drop interaction that you create. And the drag or drop interaction is created really easily. It just has one argument to its initializer, which is a delegate. And then what's going to happen is when a drag or a drop, or both, you can have a view be both, starts, the delegate is going to start receiving some messages, and you have to respond to those messages that are sent to it if you want to participate. And those messages are really easy to respond to. So let's take a look at that. Let's first look at being a drag person, a view that has something in you that you want to drag into other apps. Once you register that drag interaction on your view, then when the user does that long press and move, which looks like a drag, for drag with drag and drop, you're going to get this message, drag interaction items for beginning. Okay, and this is really simple. You're just going to return an array of the items you're willing to have dragged from your view. Okay, so what does a drag item look like? Well, a drag item really only has one important thing, which is what's called an item provider. Now, an item provider is just something that can provide the data that's going to be dragged. And you might ask, well, how come the drag item just doesn't have the data, okay, the thing you want to drag? And the reason is it might be expensive for you to create that data. Okay, maybe it's an image or something you have to load up for some reason or do something else. So drag and drop is completely asynchronous. Okay, you start that drag and it's really lightweight and it's dragging around and almost nothing is happening as this happens. But then when the drop happens, then if you're an item provider, you have to actually, give the data out, even if that takes a certain amount of time. So that's why we've added item providers. Now, luckily, there's a lot of built-in item providers, classes that already exist in iOS that are item providers like NS attributed string. Okay, so you can pick up pieces of text and they'll drag around with their fonts and everything. There's also NS string, which is text without the fonts. UI image, of course, you can pick up and drag UI images around. NS URL, that's a really nice one. You go into a web page, you pick up a URL and drop it. Maybe it's a reference to an article or a URL for an image like we're going to have in the demo that we're going to build, etc. UI color, map item, a contact from the address book, a lot of things you can pick up and move. These are all item providers. Okay, so to create a drag item, you just create them with this NS item provider and provide the object that is going to provide the data. Now, of course, you could write your own item provider that provides your own kind of data, but most of the time you're just going to use these nice pre-made ones. There's one other thing in a drag item, which is for local drags. Okay, drag and drop can work within an app and between apps. It only works between apps on iPad because you can only get 2 apps on screen at the same time in iPad. But on iPhone and iPad, you can do it inside the app. And if you're drag and drop inside the app, then you can kind of short circuit all this item provider business and just use this little var local object in your drag item, and that'll just mean you're dragging this local object, and that local object can be anything. It's of type any, so you can put anything you want there and use drag and drop to drag anything in your app from one place to another. Okay, so that's getting a drag started. You just got to provide this items for beginning array, and that's it. If in the middle of a drag, someone uses another finger to pick on something else that they want to drag, then you're going to get this message, items for adding to, the session. Okay, and all you have to do there, provide an array of drag items. Okay, often that array of drag items will just be one drag item, or it could be empty. In either items for beginning or items for adding to, if you return an empty array here, it means I don't have anything to drag. Thanks for asking. Okay, so it's really easy to just not participate if you don't want to. Okay, so that makes the drag start, and that's it. That's all you have to do to be a drag source. Okay, now what about accepting a drop? Okay, so now you're on the other side of the drop. Someone dropped it on you. Well, this is a kind of a multi-step process. The first one is you're going to get this message sent to you. Again, this is if you've add interaction, UI drop interaction to a UI view. You're going to get this message when a drag starts heading your way, which is can handle. Okay, drop interaction can handle, and you're going to get this session thing, and it returns a bool, which is whether you can handle a drag like that. So what does a drag like that mean? Well, you have to look at this session that it passed you there, that UI drag session, and you're usually only going to call one method in there, which is can load objects of class. Okay, you're going to ask that session, well, can you provide an NS string? If so, I'm in. Can you provide a UI image? I'm in. Or if not, can't provide the things you're interested in, then you just return false from this can handle session, and it won't bother you anymore during this drag. Okay? So that's to get it started. Now, if you were to say, yes, I can load objects of that type, then you're going to start getting this session did update message sent to you. Okay? Again, it's going to pass that session to you again, and the session might have changed a little because maybe the finger has moved a little bit, and so maybe that changes your decision about whether you want to accept this drop. But what you return from session did update is a UI drop proposal. Now, this is your proposal as a drop receiver for what you're willing to do with this drop. And there's really only 3 things you can do. You can have a drop proposal which is cancel, which is to say, I propose canceling this drop if you want to try and drop it right where you are now because I don't accept it there. And the drag will have a little icon that appears on it, which is like, a red circle with a line through it saying, no, you can't drop here. Then there's copy and move. Copy and move is a proposal that says, yes, I propose I will receive this drop and I will either copy the item or move it. Now, copy is most often what you're going to do here. Move would only make sense for a drag within your app because you're going to be moving it from wherever it was. It won't be there anymore, and now it's going to be at the new place. That can only happen within your own app. So move is only inside your own app if you're actually moving the thing rather than copying it, making a copy of it. If someone's dragging from outside, you're always going to be copying it. So that's it. You just have to say cancel, move, or copy each time you're asked about this. By the way, you can look at the session and find out where the finger is in your view by asking the session the location in the view. So some places in your view, maybe you'll accept a drop and some place not. All right? So that's super simple. And so this proposal is kind of a contract to accept the drop if it were to be dropped at this location. And so if you do accept it, then if you don't say .cancel there in your proposal, then you'll get perform drop when the finger is released and the drop happens. Okay? Now perform drop, you're going to get that session back again. Here you're almost always only going to call one method, which is load objects of class. Okay, so we saw already the can load object class. Now we have the actual load objects of class. Now this is an awesome little method. This is one of the ways they made drag and drop so simple to implement with all that asynchrony, but without a lot of difficulty in your app, which is you just call load objects of class. You specify the class you're willing to receive from the drop, so like attributed string or a color or a URL or image, whatever, presumably the things you said you would accept earlier on, and it will go and get that data asynchronously on another thread, and when it gets it all from the drag source, it will call the closure you provide, with the first argument being an array of those things. Okay, so in this case, I'm saying load objects of class NS attributed string, so it's going to call that closure with the strings being an array of NS attributed string. Now, it's actually an array of something that implements the provider protocol, so you're going to have to cast it with as, but it's essentially an array of those NS attributed strings. And similarly, you could do UI image.self and all that. By the way, that NS attributed string.self, that's the way you specify the class NS attributed string, if you want to pass it as an argument to a function. We haven't seen that before, but that's all you do. And this closure is sent to you and implemented on the main queue, so you can feel free to do UI stuff here. You don't have to dispatch the main queue if you don't want to. So it's really, really super convenient, okay, to do whatever you want. And you know, you accept this drop, and it might take a little while for this information to appear, but when it does, you just have the code right here automatically executed. And you can do load objects of class multiple different classes in the same drop. We're going to do that in the demo, for example. We're only going to accept drags that are of images, but that also have a URL for the image. So we're looking for two pieces of data in the same drag, a URL and an image, and we will be doing load objects of class both of URL and of the UI image. Perfectly legal. Okay, they'll both be happening asynchronously. You don't know which one's going to finish first, but you've got to write your code so it doesn't matter. But that's all you need to do. And that's all you usually do in perform drop, or you're not really going to do much else, is just get that data start coming your way. Okay? So that did drag and drop, super duper simple to implement. So we're going to do a little demo of it so you can see it in action. And I'm going to do this on the actual iPad, and I think we figured a way to get this on the screen that will make everybody happy here. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use QuickTime. So here's QuickTime. It's just showing let's hide others here. Okay, so this is just showing my iPad. So this app that we're going to build, we're actually going to build this over the course of this week and next. It's called Emoji Art, and it lets you build a nice little artistic painting, if you want to think of that, by using emoji. Okay, so we love emoji in this class. As you know, this is Emoji 101. And so how does this thing work? Well, it uses multitasking, both to drag and drop the emoji and also to go find an image to be the background. So let's see how that works. So if you haven't seen the multitasking UI in iPad, you just swipe up from the bottom, okay? And when you do, you can see all of your apps if you swipe all the way up. You can also pick your favorite apps. I just picked the one on the right there, which is this one. And if you want, you can swipe up to bring this up, and you can take a second app. I'm going to do Safari here, and you can pick it up and drag it and actually have it be side by side. So now I've got both these apps running at the same time, side by side. I got Google up on the left. So I'm going to use Safari here to find a nice background image for the picture. So I'm going to let's draw something nice. How about countryside cartoon? I think is some pretty cool images. Yeah, here's some images. We'll view these images. So here they are. So I can kind of scroll through on the net here, try to find some image that I like. I don't really like much of these. Let's see. What do we got? Yeah, maybe something like, how about this one right here? Okay, so I'm just going to press and hold. Look what happens when I press and hold. You see, I'm picking this up. I can drag and drop. And when I drag over into my view over here and drop it, woohoo, that image appeared in my app. Okay? And we're going to do that part of it today. That's the demo we're going to do today. Now, this app also has, on the left here, a table view with the documents. So I'm currently working on untitled document here. I can add new documents by pressing plus, okay, or go back to my document here. I can also drag these emoji from the top down. So I'm going to pick the B here. I'm pressing and holding. Look, I'm doing drag and drop again. Notice I can use it to reposition the B in this thing at the top. This thing at the top is called a collection view, okay? And that's, so we're going to see both table view and collection view in this app that we're going to build. And I can also pick up the B and drag them down here into my emoji art document. I can get a couple of B's here. Okay, I can select the B's and make them smaller, let's say. Have a bunch of B's there. Maybe someone rode their bike out here. Okay, that a little smaller. Maybe an apple fell off this tree. We can zoom in, for example, really close here to maybe make this apple really small. It didn't fall far from this tree right here. Okay, we can zoom back out. So basically we can build ourselves a nice image here with our emoji art editor. Okay, so that's what we're going to build. We can also do things like add more emoji. So we click on here to add more emoji. I can bring up the emoji and, I don't know, put some farm animals here. Or I can't even, here isn't a farm animal. Add those and just put these into my row. See, I've got it right there, and I could pull these out. Okay? So that's what we're going to build. Pretty cool app, lots of pieces to it. We're going to start out by building this thing where we can pick up an image and drop it in here, right? So pick up an image, we can even replace the image we have or whatever, okay? So how are we going to do this? All right, so we're going to create a brand new Xcode project. Okay, single view app as always. We're going to call it Emoji Art, right? We're going to put it where we put all our apps, of course. Here it is. I'm going to go and clean up a little bit here, move these things out of the way as I want to do. Put that in supporting files so that you can see exactly the files we're working on. Okay, I'm going to delete this generic controller that was given to me and just move that into the trash. Here's my storyboard right here. Of course, we need our own custom controller and our own custom view actually for that emoji view. So I'm going to create those right off the bat. Okay, I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be a custom UI view controller. I'm going to call it my emoji art view controller. Okay, here it is. This is going to be the main view controller of that thing that does all the stuff that we were just talking about right there. I'll go to my storyboard and make sure that I remember to set this thing's identity to that. So we'll go to Identity Inspector and make this be an emoji art view controller. Right there. I'm going to do all this stuff on iPad since this is going to be an iPad only app, right? It relies on drag and drop, so it's an iPad only app. Actually, let's even make it landscape. I think it'll fit a little better as we're doing stuff here. Okay, so here is our nice UI. Now we need a custom UI view to accept all those drag and drops and the view and all that stuff. So let's go do that. New file, again. This one's going to be a custom subclass of UI view. We'll call it emoji art view. Okay, here's our emoji art view. And we're going to, right off the bat, go and implement this, okay? I'm going to start by just doing the background image. So I'm going to have a var here called background image, which is going to be a UI image. And whenever you set it, I'm going to make sure to call set needs display because I need to call my drawRect. I'm going to use this background image to draw my background in drawRect. So here's drawRect. I'm just going to say background image. Please draw yourself in my bounds. Okay, so world's simplest drawing a UI view here, and that's all it's going to do for now. Eventually it's going to do more. It's going to draw all those little emojis that I'm going to drop in it, of course, but for now it's just the background image only. Let's go ahead and build our UI in our storyboard here. I'm going to actually do something. You'll see why I'm going to do this later, but I'm going to create just a generic UI view here to be my drop zone. Okay, UI view. Where is it? Here we go. This is generic UI view. I'm not even going to create a subclass of it or anything. All it's going to do, this view is only going to have one responsibility, which is to accept the drops. of the image and set that image in that emoji art view I just created. So we'll go up here, put this guy all the way to the edges. Actually, let's just use the pin to do that. We'll go over here and say all hooked up to all the edges. This is one of my favorite constraint things, is just put zeros all here and say add constraints. Let's double check our constraints. We always want to do that, make sure that it did the right thing. Looks good, right? Added, put all the edges up to the safe area, looking good. And so that we can see this view clearly, I'm going to give it a little bit of background color, not much. Instead of white, I'll make it like a really light gray here. Yeah, like that. Okay, can you all? Yeah, you can see it's just a light touch of light gray, so we can identify this is our drop zone view. And then I'm going to put an emoji art view inside of it. So let's go do that. We know how to add a custom view, is add another generic view, but this one we're going to go to our identity inspector here and change to be an emoji art view. This is how we make this be an emoji art view as opposed to being just a generic UI view. This one also I'm going to use my favorite little constraint maker. Bloop, smash it, so now it's jammed up to all the edges. So now we've added the emoji view. Let's go ahead and put outlets to both of those things. So I'm going to go over here and create outlets both to the drop zone and to that emoji view. So it's kind of hard to get at those two things since they're right on top of each other. So again, we're going to use the document outline. The document outline is fantastic for getting at things that are hard to get at. There is another way, I'll remind you, Control Shift and click. Okay, Control Shift click brings up a menu and you can pick the things that are underneath the mouse, even if they're inside each other, right? But I tend to prefer to use the document outline because it's just clearer what I'm doing here. So this top level view is our drop zone. So I'm going to create a outlet to that by just dragging from the document outline into our view controller. Actually, before I do that, let's go over here and clean out this code in here so that it's a little clearer. Whoops, not clean out that much. How about this much? Okay, so I usually do that, but I didn't do it here. But so this is my emoji art view controller right here. You recognize that? So let's go ahead and create the drop zone outlet. I'll call this drop zone. And again, this is just a generic UI view that I'm going to register that drop interaction with. And then let's also create an outlet to our emoji art view. That's just so I can set its background image when I want to. So emoji art view. Now, you might ask the question, why don't I just make the emoji art view be the drop zone? Okay, why do I have this separate drop zone thing? Well, that's because two reasons. One, I need to keep track of at the controller level what's dropped in, because I'm actually going to remember the URL of what's dropped in. Okay, and all the keeping track of the document, which we're going to do next week, has to happen at the controller level. We don't want the view doing that. And secondly, sometimes I'm going to eventually put this view in a scroll view, and it might be too small. It might not be filling the space anymore. And so I want the drop zone to be as big as possible. So when I drop stuff in, boom, it always works. Okay, so that's why I made those separate. But it's not really that big a deal, not really that much of a requirement to do it. I didn't want you to think there's some special reason like you have to make your drop zone be a separate generic view. You don't have to. All right, so right off the bat, when my drop zone is set up for me, I'm going to add that interaction. So I'm just going to say drop zone, add interaction, a UI drop interaction, because I'm trying to receive the drop of that thing. And all that we have to provide here is a delegate. And so I'm going to make the delegate be myself. So the controller is the one who's going to handle the drop delegate methods. And of course, we're going to have to say that we are a UI drop interaction delegate for that to work. Right? Now, all the methods in here, they're Objective-C methods. They all happen to be optional. So I implement this, but of course, I don't actually do anything. I'm kind of surprised they didn't make at least the can handle be required, but they decided not to do that. So that's all we need to do to make this drop work, though, is do the can handle, and then when the session updates and the perform drop, we have to do those three things to make it work. So let's do that. Okay, we got the can handle. That's this one. Okay, drop interaction, can handle session. So inside here, I only want drags that have an image and also a URL for that image. So I'm going to say return only true if the session can load objects of class NS URL. Notice that's NS URL. This whole thing is Objective-C compatible, and in Swift it's called URL. It's a struct, and in Objective-C is NSURL, it's a class. Now those two things are automatically bridged to each other, so you can always as one to the other, but here this is one of the few places in Objective-C where you have to use an Objective-C thing, and that's because we're specifying the class here, the actual class, right? We're not taking an instance where Swift can kind of figure out what you want. It's the actual class NSURL that we're talking about here. Okay, and we want the session to say it can load objects of class UI image. Okay, so I want both the URL and the image, or I'm not interested in a drag. So if you drag an attributed string on me right now, I don't care. I'm only interested if you can drag something that's both an image and the URL for the image. Okay? Maybe that URL, maybe you would drag something that's an image and a URL, and it's not a URL of that image, but we're going to find that out. You're going to see here pretty quick. All right, so that's saying that we can handle a drag like that. So this is basically just saying, if you're not that kind of drag, then don't even talk to me. So if it is that kind of drag, then it's going to talk to us, and it's going to do this update session. Okay, this one right here, session did update, you see that? And all we need to do here is return our drop proposal. And so I'm happy to have something like that dropped anywhere inside of my little gray drop zone. So I'm going to return, oops, that thing right there, return UI drop proposal. And here the constructor here is operation. And the operation I'm going to return is .copy, because this is always being dragged from outside my app, so it's always going to be copying in. And there's no reason I would ever cancel it. I'm always happy to accept a new image. All right, now if someone lets go of the finger, I'm going to get perform drop. Okay, so here's the perform drop one. And in here, like I said, all I'm going to do is go tell the drag and drop system, okay, let that guy know I want the data and give it to me, and then call this closure. Okay, so I'm going to have session.load objects of class, and I want the NSURL ones. Okay, and here is the completion handler that gives me the NSURLs. All right, so this is the completion handler means it's going to get called when it's completed going and getting the data. And then I also want to load the objects for UI image. Okay, and give me the images. Now, what am I going to do with this URL and this image? Well, eventually I need to hold on to that URL because I'm going to create a document, which is an emoji art document, and its background is going to be a URL. Okay, because I don't want to store that huge image with all my documents. I'm just going to store the URL, and anytime I display the document, I'll just go get the image off the network. Okay. Now, my documents won't work if there's no network, but it's a design decision. So how am I going to do this? Well, to make this go a little quicker in here, I actually created a little bit of utility code, which you will, of course, be free to look at your leisure. And we'll take a quick glance at it. And this utility code right here has a class called ImageFetcher. And all ImageFetcher does is it takes a URL, goes and fetches the image, makes sure it is an image, and when it's sure it's got an image, it calls you back with a handler that you give to it. Okay, so it's just kind of this asynchronous check and make sure this is actually an image. And it has this other cool feature where it has a backup image. So if I go out and fetch the URL and get it back and, whoa, that's not the URL of an image, then it uses the backup image. It creates a URL for that, a local URL in the file system, and then gives you that URL. So it's kind of a backup. And that's exactly what I want here, because I want to go fetch that image like of the countryside, and if I can get it, I'll use that URL, but if I can't, I want the image that was being dragged instead, and I'll create a local URL to it. So that's all ImageFetcher does, and to use it is super easy. I'm just going to create a var ImageFetcher, which is going to be of type ImageFetcher. I'm going to make it be an implicitly unwrapped optional. It's really only going to be active during this, while we're waiting for these things to come back. And so I'm going to create it, ImageFetcher equals an ImageFetcher. It takes no arguments except for a closure to call back, and this closure calls back with the URL that it fetched and the image to use, either the actual image it fetched or the backup image if you provided one. Okay? And inside here, I can do whatever I want with the URL and the image, but I am not on the main queue here. Okay? This guy, when he comes back after fetching that thing, it's not on the main queue. So I have to dispatch queue back to the main queue here with dispatch async. Okay? Now I can, for example, set my emoji art views background image to that image. So I'm not really looking at the URL yet because I'm not really saving the document. So I'm just ignoring that. I'm just setting the background image to the image that I fetched from that URL. All right, so how do I fetch it? Well, in load objects right here, I just say image self.image fetcher, fetch that URL. Okay, that's what the image fetcher does. It fetches that URL, and then I say to the image fetcher here, use as a backup this image. Okay, now this, notice, is NSURLs. So a drag can have multiple URLs. Remember, I can start a drag and then tap on some more things, and now I'm dragging a whole bunch of things. So how do I get the URL I want? Well, I'm just going to grab the first one. I'm going to say if I can let URL equal NSURLs first as a URL, because I want it as a Swift URL, then I will go fetch it. And similarly down here, if I can let the image equal the images that I got, the first one as a UI image, then I'll do it. And remember, I have to do an as here, not just because this is NSURL and I want URL. I notice I even have to do it here when this is already UI image. It's because the type of this array is NS item providers, okay? Right? So we have to convert them to the actual kind of provider that we're expecting here. And of course, for some reason it doesn't work. It's as question marks, it won't crash, it'll just do nothing here. And that's another thing about drag and drop is if you drag and drop and you can't get the data or whatever, just nothing happens. For the user, it was just experience of, oh, I dropped that in, it didn't work. Maybe they'll either try it again or go try and drag and drop something else. So it's kind of a quiet, kind of not a noisy system where it's putting up a lot of alerts. Oh, drop failed, all this, and that's very disturbing to the user. Users will quickly move on if a drop doesn't work. Okay, so that's it. That's all we need to do here to make this drag and drop work. So let's go run this version over on our iPad over here. So let me bring this up. Quick time. Okay, so here's our iPad. Here it is. Not much of a UI yet, but this is it. Okay, this big white area is my emoji art view. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Go down here, grab Safari, bring it up here, get them both on screen. This time, let's look for something else. Let's go look at Stanford images, maybe. See what we can find here. Okay, I see a lot of images there. Let's grab some of these and see what we find. How about this one right here? I'm going to drag this. Notice the green plus. You see the green plus? That's because we returned that UI drop operation copy. That's what the green plus means. And I let go. Woohoo! Dropped it in. It's showing it. Let's try another one. Let's try this one right here. Okay, now this one's bigger. Look how long it's taking to load here. Okay, it's fetching this URL, getting the data, asynchronous, and finally went in there. But it, you know, how big the data is will decide how long it loads. So that one's a low resolution. You can see it's very grainy. The other one was higher resolution. So let's see if we can find a really high resolution one. That was me. The problem with showing these demos at Stanford is gigabit Ethernet. Everything is super fast. But if you do this on any other network, these things take a little time. Now, if we were really doing this out for real, we'd probably put a spinning wheel there. Okay, because as soon as we get that perform drop, we know we've gone off to fetch that. So we'll put the spinning wheel there and see what happens before it returns. Okay, that gives our user a better idea what's going on. Okay, pretty cool. So that was step one of building our app. We're making quite a lot of progress. The next thing we want to do is that table view on the left and the collection view on the top. So I'm going to go back to the slides and talk to you about those topics. Okay, let's go over here to slides and talk about these. All right, table view and collection view. So what are table view and collection view? You've seen these things all over iOS. You actually know what they are already. They're UI scroll view subclasses that are used to provide access to unbounded amounts of information. And they each display them in a slightly different way. A table view displays the information as a big long list. Okay, the list might be divided into sections, but it's a big long list. Collection view presents it in a configurable way, almost any two-dimensional way. Okay, now by default, the way it presents it is called flow layout. And flow layout you want to think of as being just like text, right? If you have text, it flows across from left to right, and when it runs out of space, it goes to the next line, and then it flows some more, and next line. That's how a collection view by default lays out. Okay, you give it a bunch of items to lay out. They might be of different sizes, whatever, and it'll just start laying them out and then wrapping to the next line. And it'll even justify, you know how text is justified on both sides? It'll do that as well if you want. And so that's how flow layout works. Now, I say collection view is arbitrary. Like, people have written layouts for a collection view. They're like a fan of cards, all right? And you pick a card, and it's no problem. It's quite easy to actually write a layout like that. But I'm not going to talk about any of that custom layout writing. We're going to do only flow layout, which is the default. You don't have to do anything to turn that layout on. It's just the layout that comes with collection view. So that's all I'm going to focus on. But I do want you to know that there is a way you could write your own layout that's not flow layout and have your collection view present things in some other way. So that's what table view and collection view are. I'm going to talk about them together because their API, in other words, the programming interface you use, very similar, almost identical, okay? Really, the only difference is we're talking rows versus arbitrary items that are being flowed or otherwise laid out in 2D. All right, so UI table view, just in case you're not understanding which thing I'm talking about, I know you've seen it, it's just a big long list like this. The list can be super simple, okay? I got a list of food here, it's just listed out, or the list can be divided into sections. Okay, so I got junk food, fruits, dessert, vegetable. I divided the list into sections, okay? So those are sections in a table view. And it can show a little bit of simple ancillary information kind of for free. Like here I've got a little image of the food. You can probably barely see, yeah, you can see it there. And it has 4 different ways to present the simple information. One is this, called subtitle style, where the ancillary information appears right below the main information. This is left detail, okay, everything over on the left. Here's right detail, where the ancillary information is on the right and the main stuff's on the left. Or there's basic style, where you don't see the ancillary information. So these 4 styles are kind of built into table view. You kind of get them for free. But it also has a very powerful style called custom style. And in custom style, look, the rows can be anything you want. In fact, this UI, you just build it in your storyboard using auto layout and all those things to build whatever kind of UI you want. Now, collection view, all cells are custom. Collection view doesn't have those 4 simple ones. All right? So this is how these things can look, how table view can look. So collection view, and in table view, the rows can be grouped together. In addition to being sections, they can also be, the sections can be made to look kind of like they're grouped. You probably noticed this UI, it's from the settings app in iOS. We almost always only use this grouped style like this when the data in the table is static. In other words, it's not showing arbitrary information like a list of foods that might be changing over time. It's showing fixed things, like here, the accessibility settings. Those never change, they are fixed, right? So that's the only time we use this group style. Otherwise, it's in what's called plain style. That's all the things I was just showing you. So collection view, like I say, it's kind of flowing like text. So here I've got these foods with an image of them, and it's kind of flowing from line to line. Happens to be all the same size, so there's 3 per line. But there's no rows here. You might look at this and say, oh, just like table, you've got rows. No, there's not rows. These items just happen to be flowing from line to line. They're lining up in rows. If they were different sizes, they wouldn't look quite so rowed there, okay? And you can also have, sections in collection views as well. Okay, so collection view, table view both have this concept of dividing the information up into sections. All right? Okay, so that's what they look like. How do you get one into your app? And you drag it out, of course, from the object palette, right? Table view or collection view, drag it out. There's also pre-packaged MVCs. If your entire view, your entire self.view of your MVC is going to be a table view, you're going to want to use the table view controller that you can drag out. Okay, it's like dragging out a view controller. You drag out a table view controller, and boom, you'll get one. It'll all be pre-wired up, and you'll have the table view in there and all that. Same thing with the collection view controller. So this is kind of a convenience thing, but I do recommend if you ever do have an MVC that the entire view is a table view or collection view, use these convenience things. They are convenient. Okay. So the most important thing to understand in the API or using these things is, where does the data come from? How do I get the data into my table? And we know that from my MVC talk, views are not allowed to own their data. So we can't have a var in table view, which is, here's the data. Okay, we can't just give it the data. The table view has to ask for the data. Okay, so it asks for the data in the same way as delegation. Okay, there's going to be a var. It's called data source. Both table view and collection view have this. And that data source is, its type is a protocol. And in that protocol is a bunch of methods that ask for the data. Give me the data. Okay, they're just constantly asking for the data. That's how they get their data. Okay, and we're going to talk about what the important methods are in that data source protocol in a moment. And so then you're going to understand how to load up your table or your collection view. Now, table and collection view also have a delegate. That's a different var, okay? And that controls how the data is displayed, like how the collection view and the table view are configured, not what it's displaying, not the actual data, just kind of the how. All right? So you set these two vars to your controller 99.99% of the time. If you drag out those pre-packaged ones, these vars get automatically set for you. Okay? But the bottom line is that your controller is going to be answering all these give me the data questions. All right? So this give me the data protocols have many methods in them, surprisingly. You would think it'd not be that much, but there's actually, I think, over a dozen, maybe even 15 or more. But there's three super important ones, the three main give me the data ones, and we're going to talk about those three. And they're pretty much the same in both. I'm going to talk about mostly about the table view ones, but it's pretty much identical to collection view. And here they are. In table view and collection view, they both have number of sections. I told you that the information can be divided into sections, so of course it wants to know how many sections are there. Oftentimes the answer is 1. In fact, if you don't implement this method, that'll be the answer, 1 section. Everything's in one big section, all right? Second one is, okay, how many rows in each section? So it's just going to ask you for every section, how many rows in this section, how many rows section, or in the collection view section, how many items are in this section? Okay, that's the next question I'm going to ask you. So these two make obvious sense. Then there's the biggie, is getting the data in each row or for each item. Now, this one is quite flexible because the data you're going to present in your table view or collection view might be quite complicated. And so we're going to talk about this method in great detail here. Notice the argument, though, there, that green type index path. Okay? Index path is just a little, tiny little structure that contains the section and the row, or the section and the item. Okay? So it's just a way to combine the row, section, and row so that collection view and table view can ask you very simply, give me the data for this section and row. It gives you an index path. So nothing special about an index path. It literally just has vars row, item, and section. Those are the only vars that you're going to use when you use index path in these classes. Okay, super simple. All right, so let's dive into cell for row and index path. I'm going to do the table view one, like I say, but it's the same for collection view. It's just called cell for item at index path. Okay, so this method is going to return a UI view. You see that red thing, UI table view cell? That is a subclass of UI view. This is the view that's going to be used to draw the row or the item in a collection view. Okay, super duper simple, right? Okay, but it's a little bit of complexity here because of this first line of code. This is always going to be pretty much the first line of code in your cell for row at method, which is DQ reusable cell with identifier for index path. Now, what the heck does all that mean? DQ reusable cell with identifier. So let's break down that line and understand what's going on there. First of all, let's understand reuse. If I had a table view with 10,000 things in it, let's say all the songs in my iPod library, okay, 10,000 of them in there, and I had 10,000 views, each of which might have, you know, the album cover art and all this thing. Imagine that would just be ridiculously inefficient. 10,000 UI views, all populated? No way. So the table view actually only creates these UI table view cells for the visible rows. And as you scroll through and they fly off the top, it reuses them and puts them on the bottom. Okay, so it's constantly reusing these views as you scroll through your data, which makes perfect sense, right? For efficiency, that's exactly what you want to do. So when things fly off the top, no longer in view, the cell that was displaying them, the UI table view cell, which is a UI view, it goes into a reuse pool. And you get things out of that with that method, DQ reusable, whatever, right? Okay, it gives you a cell out of it. But what if that pool of reusable things is empty? Like, let's say your table just came on screen. Well, obviously there's none in there. So then what happens? Okay, when you DQ reusable cell, you still get a cell. Where does it come from? Well, the answer is it's created by copying a prototype that you create in your storyboard. Okay, so you're going to build this cell with all the labels and buttons and images that you want, build it right there using auto layout in your storyboard, and then it's going to make copies of that every time it needs one, and it can't reuse one. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. And here's an example of it. So this is a screenshot from my storyboard. This is like the top of my table view controller right here. I've got two cells here, two prototypes. The first one is just a basic cell. Okay, and the second one is that complicated one I showed you that's got the image and the category of the food and the name of the food and some details about the food, etc. Okay, so these are two separate prototypes in here, and for each of them I'm going to set their style and also give them an identifier. You see how the top one has the identifier food cell, and the bottom I gave it the identifier custom food cell. So this is just a string that you're going to use to identify which cell you want when you're DQing a reusable cell. Okay? So when you DQ a reusable cell, it'll never reuse one of the wrong type. It's only going to reuse the one of the type you want. And if there are none to reuse, it'll make one by copying what you see here. Okay? All the views in there, the image view and the text views, will all be copied, okay, for you to make another row. Okay, so now you understand this yellow line, right? DQ reusable cell with identifier, that's like food cell or custom food cell, says which of the prototypes you want. And of course, for index path is the index path we're at, okay, because we're being asked to create something for that index path. Okay, got that? All right. The fact that these cells are reused, notice red, the fact that these cells are reused has big implications for multi-threading. Because you might have an image in your row and you have to go fetch it. So you fire off some fetching thing on another thread to go get something off the internet. It's taking a long time. Meanwhile, the user flicks and scrolls that cell away and it gets reused. And now it's showing something else. And then here comes the image back. Well, if you're not careful, you'll blast that image from the other cell into the new one. Do you see why you're going to do that? So when that image comes back, you got to make sure, oh, is this cell still showing the thing that I made that request for? Okay, we talked about this all the time with multi-threading. When it comes back, you got to check to make sure the world is still what you thought. Well, this really happens a lot with these cells because they're constantly flying around and getting reused. All right. So now that we know about this, we sometimes will have a line like this in our thing, which is let the prototype, which is just a string here, equal some decision, some code that makes a decision, either a food cell or a custom food cell. So that decision right there, it might be made on what index path you have, like which section it's in, or maybe it's based on the data that's going there, like maybe some fruits we have detailed information about and some foods we have detailed information about, some foods we don't, right? So we're going to use the detailed one, custom food cell, when we have the information, and food cell when we don't. You see how we can just decide right here which one is appropriate, and then we dequeue that one to get the right cell. Okay? All right. Now, we got the cell. It's a table view cell, UI table view cell. Okay? They got dequeued. How can we configure the cell to have the data in it? Okay, well that depends on whether it's one of these basic four, like subtitle, left detail, right detail, or basic, or whether it's a custom cell, like the one with the Apple image and all that. So let's look at the basic ones. That one, basically table view cell has a couple of outlets on it called text label and detail text label that you can just set, okay, for the defaults. It also has another one called image view. A little image can appear on the left of the cell. So if that's good enough for you, then you can just use those outlets and you're good to go. Okay, so you just set, this is just a UI table view cell is just a view, okay? It happens to have outlets. It's a view with outlets, and we're going to talk about that in a second because we've never seen views with outlets. Only controllers have had outlets up till now. Okay, but if that's not good enough and you need something complicated like that detail Apple cell that we had right there, then you're going to have to make a custom subclass of UI table view cell. Okay, and let's see why and how we do that. So we have this custom cell right there. We clearly need outlets to it, right? Otherwise, how are we going to set those things? We've got to have outlets. And so you might think, well, I'm just going to put that in my table view controller like I always do. right? My subclass of my controller. But we can't do that. And do you see why we can't do that? Because there could be 100 of these cells. This is a prototype we're copying. We can't have one outlet. Which one wins? They can, you know what I'm saying? And these could be arrays, I guess, like an outlet collection, but that wouldn't make any sense either. Because those things are constantly being reused, that array would be going crazy as people stroll. So we can't do that. We cannot use our controller as a place to put outlets. So for the first time, we're actually going to put outlets in a view. And this view has to be a subclass of UI table view cell, that thing that the cell for row at returns, okay? So you're going to make a subclass of it, my table view cell, and you're going to put the outlets in there. So each row, okay, is going to have its own table view cell, and each table view cell is going to have its own outlets. Even the basic and subtitle ones have their own outlets, text label, detail text label, and image view, right? But yours can have whatever outlets you want, because you're just going to, this is going to be a class you're going to write, okay? Now, don't forget, when you create a custom UI table view cell subclass, you got to go to the identity inspector with the little prototype row there selected and set the identity, because by default it'll be class UI table view cell. So you have to change it to be class my TVC or whatever, my table view cell. Okay? Again, just like you set the class for the controllers and for the views, you also do the same thing for the cells. All right, and that's it. So it's not that hard actually. The only thing is, back in cell for row at, if we want to access those outlets, we have to cast the cell that comes back from DQ reusable cell with identifier, because that comes back, that's of class UI table view cell. So it doesn't know about my outlets, so I have to cast it to be my TVC. Now I've got this local variable my TVC, my TV cell, which is cast, and I can do things like tvc.name and tvc.emoji, okay, those outlets that I had, and I can set them to be my data. Notice that my data, I've created functions in my controller called food at index path and emoji at index path. This is a common thing to want to do, which is basically have functions that take an index path and go look in your model, okay, so that you can easily just drop them in here when asked. Okay? Okay, so that's it. That's how you load up cells. In collection view, you always have to do it this way. Okay, collection view has no basic or subtitle. And in table view, anytime you have anything more than just the simple cells, you have to do it this way. But it's done the exactly the same way in the both collection and table view. Now, take a breath from this and talk about static table views. So sometimes a table, we only use it to lay out our UI. We're not actually using it as a place to have arbitrary amounts of data. It has a fixed amount of data. Usually this is something like a settings app or a preferences panel in our app, okay, where everything is fixed and we're just using it to group things and lay out things in nice rows, okay? So when we do that, we don't have to do any of this stuff. Number of rows and sections, none of that. Cell for row at, because we just do it all directly in our storyboard, and we can wire the things in the rows directly to our controller. Why? Because there's only one of every thing. This is not a prototype that gets copied, okay, because it's static. The data is static, so we can just go directly to our controller in this case. It's quite easy, and so it's not uncommon to use this. And the way you do this, kind of make a table into this, is you go click on the table in Storyboard and change its content right there to static cells. Okay, by default it'll be dynamic prototypes, but you're going to set it to static cells. And by the way, the style there is almost always grouped. Remember I showed you that grouped style like it's in the settings app? That's pretty much what you're going to use when you have static cells. That's what looks the best when it's static. Then you go into the document outline. This is a little obscure, but don't forget this piece. You go to the document outline and you'll find the sections there, these static sections. And you can go to each section. First of all, you can create more sections by just inspecting the table view and say how many sections you want. But then when you find the sections of the document outline, you click on them and inspect the section, and you can add rows to it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, how do I add a row to this section? I can't figure it out. That's how you do it. Document outline, click on the section, inspector, hit the number of rows you want. Okay? And then you just start dragging in labels and buttons and switches, whatever you want to do, and control dragging them right to your controller. Okay? Because it's just a way to lay those things out. So that's a totally different kind of table view we call static table view. All right, how about segueing from a table view? Okay, so I want to click on a row and have it segue. Well, this is absolutely exactly straightforward as you might think until we get to prepare for segue. Okay. I also want to talk about this detail disclosure accessory. So if you inspect your table view cell and you go over into the inspector and under accessory you choose detail disclosure, you'll get that little eye with a circle around it. Okay. And you can segue from it or from the row. So if someone clicks on the row, it'll do one segue. If they click on this little thing, it'll do a different segue. And why would you want this? Well, let's say this is our emoji art document list, and clicking on the row is obviously going to bring up that emoji art document. Maybe clicking on the little eye segues to a different MVC, which lets us maybe change the name of the document, who authored it, when it was last created. You see what I mean? Kind of meta information about the document. So you can have both of those things segueing going on. But you make the segue the same way. You control drag from the row, and yes, you can control drag from a prototype row. Okay, this works for prototypes as well as for static. So you just control drag, and when you let go, you can see that you can set the segue for your main row, and you can also set the segue for that little button, that little accessory button, the little eye with a circle around it. Okay, so that just sets up normal segue, okay, or possibly two segues if you have that little eye. And then you inspect it, you set its identifier like we normally do. I'm going to call this my ABC segue. And then you prepare. And that's where it gets a little interesting in a table view, because if you're segueing from a prototype, you got to know which row that is when the segue actually happens. Okay, so here's how we do that. Here's prepare for segue. The key to this is the sender argument to prepare for segue, which, remember, that was like a button. If we clicked on a button to segue, well, if you click on a row, it's the UI table view cell. Okay, so you need to figure out from the UI table view cell which index path is this, so that you can go get the right model data to prepare the thing you're going to. And so the way you do that is you first cast it to be a UI table view cell or a subclass of it if you have a subclass of UI table view cell right here. Then you call this very important method in table view called index path for cell, and it will return an index path, i.e. the row and section, for that given cell. Okay, notice that you can't pass an any to this, so you can't say index path for sender. You have to have casted it first to be a UI table view cell or subclass thereof. Once you get the index path, then you can go ahead and do your normal thing where you get the destination as the MVC you're segueing to, and then you get from your model somewhere, you get the data based on the section and row, and then you assign it to the public API of the MVC you're segueing to, okay? So that's the magic of segueing. The sender is going to be a table view cell. You need to go index path for cell to find out which index path. Then you can segue. What about segueing from a collection view item? Okay, so in a collection view item, this is actually best done with target action, kind of. A collection views delegate has a method in it which is called every time an item gets touched on. It's called collection view did select item at index path. All right, and from here, use perform segue and then prepare normally. Now, when you do perform segue from here, probably the sender, that any, you're going to specify something that makes sense to you and use that in the prepare. Okay, so that's the way to segue from cells in a collection view. You could use that same strategy for UI table view, by the way. There's no reason not to use the exact same thing. In fact, some people do table view once by implementing table views did select row and index path and passing the index path as the any. Okay, so now you've got the index path. You don't even have to do any of that index path for cell business. That's perfectly reasonable too. You can do that if you want. All right, something to think about with these table and collection views is what happens if your model changes, right? You've got this table view showing all your songs in your iPod, and then you add a song somehow. It's got to update, okay? Or a new food gets discovered or something, and our food list has to change. So what do? Well, there is a method in table view and collection view called reload data. That will cause all of those methods, number of rows in section, number of section, a table view, give me the table view cell. It'll call them all again. Okay, for all the visible cells, it'll go get a new table view cell, just reload your whole table basically. It's a little heavy-handed. It's not too bad because it's actually only going to call that get me the cell for row and index path thing. It's only going to call that for the visible cell, so it's not too bad actually. But there are finer grained ones like reload rows at index paths. It gives an array of index paths and you can reload just those rows, and collection view has similar things. It's not, it's not so bad to do reload data, but you do have to think about the fact that if your model changes, you got to update your table. Okay, you don't really want your table or your collection view to get out of sync with your model for very long. You want them to stay in sync. How about the height of the rows? How do we determine the height of these rows? Okay, well there's three ways really for table view rows. One is a var in table view called row height. Okay, now this is also settable in the storyboard. This just fixes the rows. They're always going to be that height. And that works for the basic rows and things like that. Second one is setting the row height using auto layout. Okay, so you got a complicated thing, and maybe sometimes there's a fruit has a lot of detailed information, so the cell needs to be big, and sometimes the fruit has very little and the cell will be small. So you set up your auto layout properly so that it's pushing out on a generic view. So you're going to put a generic UI view as the top level view in your row, and then put all your stuff inside, and then have constraints that push that thing out, push that generic view out. Okay, and then have the generic view pinned to the edges of the row. Okay, and if you do that, then table view will be able to come along, auto lay out that thing, and it'll know what size it has to be. Okay? So to do that, you set the row height, instead of to a number, you set it to UI table view automatic dimension. That's a special value that lets it know to go do that auto layout thing. As you can imagine, that's quite expensive. Okay? You're not going to do it 10,000 times for your iPod library. So you also want to set an estimated row height, and the estimated row height just tells table view for the cells that aren't on screen, assume they're this big. Don't go auto layout them. Okay? So that's something to consider. Another way you can set the height is by implementing this method, table view height for row at index path. Okay? And then just return the height for the row at that index path. Now, if you can much more efficiently calculate the height without doing all the auto layout stuff, then this is a great one for you to do. Okay? Maybe you know that certain cells are one height and certain cells are another height, and that's it. Just one of these two, and you can return which one it is. All right? Or maybe all your cells are the same height and it's just more convenient to calculate it and return it here. That's perfectly fine. Collection view has a similar thing. The only thing about collection view is one, which is size for item at, because remember, this items are rectangles in a collection view, not rows. They don't have height, they're rectangles. The only thing about that is notice this extra little argument there. Besides size for item at is layout collection view layout right there. That's the magic thing that's doing the flow layout by default. But if you provide a collection view layout, you can do other kinds of layouts. But for your purposes in this class, at least at the beginning using this, that's always going to be a UI collection view flow layout, okay, which does the flowing. That's why there's that extra argument here for that one. Okay, how about those headers? Okay, to put the headers in there, remember, you know, like junk food and then desserts and fruits and vegetables. Those headers in table view, super easy. You just implement this method, table view title for header and section. It returns a string. It just puts it in there. Couldn't be easier. There is actually another one that returns a UI view. So you can actually have your headers be UI views with anything you want in there, okay? Collection view, much more difficult to do section headers in table view. And that's in collection view, that's because collection view, their header views are reusable, just like the cells are. And I guess this decision was made because you could imagine collection views that had a lot of sections, okay? Whereas a table, it's unlikely you're gonna have a table with 1,000 sections. Collection view, maybe you could have a lot. I'm not sure why they just decided to do it this way, but they did. It plays out very similar to using the cells. What you do to enable your headers is you inspect your collection view and click the button section header or section footer, and then a little thing will appear in your storyboard that you can go drag things into. That little thing is a prototype, and it's going to be repeated for every section header. You can put anything you want in there though, but you're going to have to create this subclass. The subclass is of something called UI collection reusable view instead of UI table view cell or UI collection view cell. So you're going to subclass that, put your outlets in there, and then you're going to implement this method, view for supplementary element of kind, which is kind of like cell for row at index path, but just for the headers. And inside there, you're going to use another DQ method. This one's called DQ reusable supplementary view of kind with identifier for index path. And that's going to make a copy of that prototype and reuse them as they scroll around on screen. Okay, so I'm just giving you understand the general brush, but if you actually want to have headers, you're going to have to go figure all this out. Okay, headers and footers. That's for collection view only. All right, billion other methods, dozens of other methods in these classes. These are very large, sophisticated classes. You can swipe to delete rows. You can move the rows around in a table view. You can scroll around, scroll to a certain row. I mean, there's just so much in there, it's hard to even get started on it. So this is the kind of thing, like everything in this class, I'm just getting you started, and you're going to have to look at the documentation for these things to see, what can I do? Read the introduction. I think I said this at the beginning, and I haven't re-emphasized it enough. For all these classes, read the text at the beginning, the overview. It'll give you an idea of what these things can do and what they're capable of, etc. So when I was making these slides, I actually created that little fruit thing, right? And so I decided, I'm just going to give you that code. Okay, the code that I used to actually create the screenshot. So I'm going to post that code, and it's just two things, a table view and a collection view that shows you the fruit. And so you can get an idea for simple stuff how to do that. But I'm also going to do a huge demo, which is emoji art, because you noticed emoji art had both a table view and a collection view. Okay, so we're going to do that. And today we're going to start by doing the table view, and then on Wednesday we'll continue and do the collection view. And the collection view is cool because you notice the collection view has drag and drop in it, and there's special support in collection view and table view for drag and drop as well, so we'll bring those two things together. I won't get back to the slides, so just to let you know what's coming up on Wednesday, in addition to doing the collection view and table view emoji art, we're also going to do text field. I don't think I showed, I showed you the feature in there where you can add more emoji, right? So there was a little text field that appeared there, so I'm going to show you how to do that. We're done with Friday sections for this quarter. The three we had were great, but that's enough. And then next week, I will be talking about your requirements for your final projects, okay? And then more iOS, okay? Needs more iOS, so we'll be doing that. Okay, back to our emoji art right here. And what are we gonna do? So we're gonna do that table view. So let's throw that table view thing in there. Let me find out where I was here. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So the table view is part of a split view, right? It slid out from the side. So I'm just going to go right to my storyboard right here and put that split view in there. Okay, so as I always recommend, zoom out when you put split view in because it gives you all those kind of default things. So I'm going to search here for split view. Here it is. So here's my split view controller. I'm going to drag it out here. It's me all this stuff. And I'm going to delete all of it. So I'm going to get rid of that, get rid of that, and get rid of that. So here's my split view. I'm going to make it be the entry point by moving the little arrow. This is my emoji art view controller. It's the detail, right? It's obviously the detail. The master is clearly choosing which one I want, which document I want. So I'm going to control drag over here to set this up as the detail right there. All right, so now how are we going to make that table view master? Well, notice that table view was all table view, right? That MVC was all table view. I didn't have any other UI in there, just the list of the documents. So I'm going to use the table view prepackaged controller. Here, see, here's table view, just the view, and here's table view, the controller. So I'm going to drag this out. It makes a controller right there. I'm going to embed this in a navigation controller, and you might say, why do I need to do that? This is an iPad-only app. But there is actually one case on iPad only where you will get a navigation controller here, which is you're in Portrait, you have another app side by side like we had Safari. It jams up the thing so much that it turns that master thing into a navigation controller. Okay, which was a really cool decision on Apple's part since you're mostly learned to build this kind of hybrid split view navigation control thing anyway. So we are going to do it. So let's select this one and go embed in navigation controller. Okay, and then this combination of this navigation controller and our little emoji art document chooser is going to be our master. So I'm going to go over here and control drag to make this my master. Now I'm going to have this table view. Right now, its identity is UI table view controller, generic UI table view controller. So I'm going to create a subclass of UI table view controller to control this table. So I'm going to go File, New. This time, when I create a Cocoa Touch class, it's going to be a subclass of UI table view controller. I'm going to call it my emoji art document table view controller. Okay, nice long name there. And this controller is the thing that's going to control this table view right here, okay? So let's go ahead and select this and set its identity to be Emoji Art Document Table View Controller. Now I'll be able to do all my magical delegate things. And in fact, if you look at this code, woo, it gives you a lot of commented out code that has to do with being a table view, because I created it as a subclass of UI Table View Controller, so it knows it needs all these things. So I'm going to delete the ones we're not going to use, like our view controller lifecycle methods. Recognize these. Woo, number of sections, number of rows, cell for row at. Right up front, these are the most important ones. These are the UI Table View data source methods here, okay? So we want to implement these to make this thing work. Now, as with any view controller or any MVC we create, we want to think about what is its model. Okay, this is the world's easiest model. It's just a list of the emoji art documents. So I'm going to make that be a list of strings. So this is var emoji art documents. And it is a list of strings, and we're even going to start it out with some document 1, document 2, and document 3, okay? Now, of course, as our app progresses, we're going to be allowing new documents to be added, et cetera, but I'm going to start with 3 documents, because we're just trying to learn a little bit about how table view works here. So that's my model. So this table is just to display this model. Well, this model doesn't have enough stuff in it to have sections, but you could imagine it would. What if I had recently created documents, recently deleted, other kinds of sections? I could have sections of documents, but I'm not going to. So I'm only going to have one section. Definitely want to get rid of this warning right here, okay, because I've completed that. Then here is number of rows in section. Okay, well, I only have one section, so I don't have to check the section. I don't have to say if section equals 0, then something, if section equals 1, or whatever. So here, it's only one section. I'm just going to return emoji art documents.count. That's how many rows are in the only section I have. Okay, is however many documents I have. And then we got this guy right here to DQ reusable cell. And remember, there's really a couple of things to DQ reusable cell. First, we have to figure out what kind of cell we're going to use. And here I only have the name, so I'm just going to use the basic cell. We'll see how to do a subclass of cell on Wednesday. But here it's just going to be the basic cell. So I'm going to go back to my storyboard here. Okay, here we go. Notice that it starts out, it just has one prototype cell, but if I want more prototype cells, all I have to do is click on the table view, okay, inspect the table view itself. You can always tell what's being inspected by the first word in the inspector there. And I just go here, see prototype cells 1, I say, oh, I want 2, 3, 4, and maybe this is a custom cell and I want to add a label to it. Right, drag this label out, put this in here, do auto layout, control drag, okay, all that stuff. I can build whatever UI I want in here, okay? But if I do that, I'm going to have to make a custom subclass of UI table view cell to have outlets to all this stuff. Okay, but I'm not going to do any of that yet, so I'm just going to have this one. So I'm going to go back here to my table view and say, table view. Sometimes it's hard to click on the controller versus the table view versus the cell. Don't forget about shift click is a good way to do it. Okay, or you can always resort over here to your document outline. So I'm going to go back down to just one cell right there. By the way, here's where we set static versus dynamic. All right, so I have this one. I'm going to have it be a basic cell. I don't even have enough information to be a subtitle cell. Right? I don't have any detailed text information. I just have the name of it. So that's all I'm going to do, have this basic cell. But it's got to have a reuse identifier because we got to, when we create the initial ones, it's got to know what prototype to copy. So I'm going to call this my document cell, okay? That's what it's the cell that represents a document right there, okay? And so that's good. So let's go back to our code right here. And now we can DQ a reusable cell of the identifier document cell. It's the only kind we have, so we can clearly just do that. And the cell that comes back is going to be of type UI table view cell, and we know that it has this nice outlet, basically called UI text label, which they made optional, which is kind of strange. They didn't make it an implicitly unwrapped optional, so you have to do that question mark there. Anyway, the text, and now we have to go to our model and get the information, and we have to do that for this index path, this section and row. Well, the section's always going to be 0 because I only have one section. So I'm just going to use the row and say, give me my emoji art document at the index path dot row. Okay, so I'm just getting out of my model for that row the information, and that's all you need to do to make this work. Okay, so let's go see this in action. This. All right, here we go. And sure enough, here it is. It came out on the left here. Whoops, you can't see it there. Let me make this a little easier to see. Let's hide others. There we go. Okay, so this is on the left, and I can select them over here. You can see I'm selecting 1, 2, 3. Now, it would be really cool over here to be able to add new documents, right? So how would I add new documents? That turns out to be really easy. I'm just going to put up on the top, right above the top row here, on the right, I'm going to put a little add button, and when you click it, it's going to add a new document. Okay, so let's go do that. Here we go. And I'm going to do that in my storyboard, of course. Now, this is a key thing to wake up for, which is when we add buttons to these top areas of a navigation controller right here, we don't add regular buttons. So we don't go over here. If I search for button, you'll see there's this button. We do not do this. It'll let you do it, but don't do it. Okay, it's this that you want, a bar button, because it's in a little navigation bar at the top. That's the button you want. Okay, so you'll get kind of messed up if you use the wrong button there. Okay, so we got this button, and I'm inspecting the button right here on the top. There's some predefined buttons, like a camera button right there, or like, what do we got, like save, okay, a save button. That's just a word, and there's also add. An add happens to be a plus. And I strongly recommend using one of these predefined ones if it describes what you're doing, because users will be used to that icon or that image doing what you expect right there. Now, this is just a normal bar button, and we can just control drag to it to create an outlet. So let's do that. Okay, so now here's my controller on the right, and here's the button. So where do we put this? Let's put this right below our UI table view data source methods right here. So I'm control dragging from the plus down here. It's going to be an action. I'm going to call it new emoji art. That's what it does. It creates a new emoji art. And I'm going to have the argument not be type any. It's going to be type bar button. Notice that you can't have no argument here, which is kind of interesting. For bar buttons, you have to have the argument, not unlike a regular button. I don't know. Okay, so now that we've hooked that up, all we have to do is make this code right here, create a new document. Well, that's really, really easy. We're just going to say emoji art documents. I'm going to do plus equals and add another array to it. Plus equals to an array, you have to another array, but it's only going to have one thing in it, which is untitled. That's what I'm going to call my new document. But actually, what if I already have something called untitled? I don't want to add two documents untitled, so I'm going to use this little utility that I created called made unique with respect to. And it takes another array, looks in that array, and makes sure that it creates something unique. So in this case, it'll do untitled 1, untitled 2, untitled 3 until it finds something unique. And so I'm going to do that with respect to the other emoji art documents. Okay? So this little thing made unique is in that same utility place where the image fetcher was, so you can go look at that later. It's very straightforward. Now, this is not enough. Okay? I've changed my model here. Now what do I need to do? Update the table, yeah. If I don't update the table, I'm going to be out of sync. So how do I update the table? I'm just going to do table view reload data. I don't have a lot of data in there, and it's not expensive to reload it. So let's just go ahead and reload the data and run. All right, so here we go. Okay, we can still select here. Let's go plus. Untitled, yeah, plus, woohoo. Oh no, I got carried away, I added too many. Now let's delete. Oh no. I can't delete. I want to swipe to delete. Everyone knows about swipe to delete. How come I can't swipe to delete? Well, turns out you have to obviously get involved with delete, because when you delete, it's not just deleting the row, it's updating your model to be deleted as well. So let's go do that as well. Let's go back here. And the very next things that are coming out have to do with this. Okay? This one is can edit row at index path. That's saying whether you're allowed to delete this row. Now the default is yes. So you actually don't have to implement this if you allow all rows to be deleted. This is only a way to prevent deletion from happening here. So we're going to allow all our rows to be deleted, so I'm not even going to uncomment this out. But then why is delete not working, okay, if that's the default? Well, because you also have to implement this method, commit editing style. The editing style is either delete or insert. You have to commit that. That means commit it to your model, okay? And so this is really easy to do. It just has an if delete or an if insert. This insert is a kind of UI table view UI for adding. We don't need that because we have our plus button, so I don't even have to do anything here. I'm just going to delete, and even notice it says delete the row from the data source, in other words, from your model. So how do I delete it here? I'm just going to say emoji art documents remove at the index path.row. And then I'm going to update the table to do that. I will tell you right now, all of you, when you're doing your final projects and stuff, you will mess this up, okay? Because these two things have to be perfectly in sync. Okay? If you do not have these perfectly in sync, you will get a crash when this happens, and it'll say something like, number of rows in the table did not match when I went to go update the rows. Okay? In other words, it's saying your model and your table don't match up. So it's easy to get them out of sync. This is a simple case where it's not easy to get out of sync, right? We move it from the model, we delete the rows from the table. But, you know, this is using delete rows instead of reload data, for example. There are other ways of deleting the rows, moving them, et cetera, updating them. You might do the wrong thing depending on how you're updating your model there. Okay, so now we should be able to swipe to delete. Okay, here's our tables, 1, 2, 3, plus, 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 swipe, okay, to delete, and gone. Also, I don't know if this is new for iOS 11, you can actually swipe all the way across and delete in one motion. Whoop. Oops, I didn't go far enough. Okay? If you swipe all the way to the edge, it will delete. And if you only do partial away, then you get the confirm button. Okay? Okay, so that's all the time we have. Perfect timing. That's it. Pretty much it for our table view. Now, like I say, we are not going to get to the part where we actually have document storing until next week, because I got to teach you a little bit of how we make things persistent in iOS on the disk, store things on the disk. But we will, on Wednesday, do our whole UI with the collection view and dragging and dropping to add more things and putting a text field in the upper left to add more emoji, all that stuff. We're going to do that on Wednesday. Okay? So I'll see you then.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.